Chapter 2. Youth is the only thing worth having. As they entered, they saw Dorian Gray. He was sitting at the piano with his back to them, turning the pages of music. "You must lend me these, Basil," he cried. "I want to learn them. They are wonderful." "That depends on how you sit today, Dorian." "Oh, I am tired of sitting, and I don't want a portrait of myself," answered the young man. When he saw Lord Henry, he suddenly got up. "I beg your pardon, Basil, but I didn't know you had anyone with you." "This is Lord Henry Wotton, Dorian, an old friend of mine. I have just been telling him what a wonderful sitter you were, and now you have spoiled everything." "You have not spoiled my pleasure in meeting you, Mr. Gray," said Lord Henry to the young man. "My aunt has often spoken about you. You are one of her favorites." "I am afraid I am in Lady Agatha's black books at present. I promised to go to a club with her last Tuesday, and I really forgot all about it. We had to play a duet together. I don't know what she will say to me. I am too frightened to call." Lord Henry looked at him. Yes, he was certainly wonderfully handsome, with his red lips, his bright blue eyes, and his wavy golden hair. He had an open and honest face. There were no dark secrets in his face. No wonder Basil Hallward loved him. The painter was busy mixing his colors. He was looking worried. "Harry, I want to finish this picture today. Would you think it rude of me if I asked you to go away?" Lord Henry smiled and looked at Dorian Gray. "Must I go, Mr. Gray?" he asked. "Oh, please don't, Lord Henry. Basil doesn't often speak to me. It is so boring, you know. Please stay. I want you to talk to me." "Well, I certainly shall not run away. You don't really mind, Basil, do you? You have often told me that you liked your sitters to have someone to talk to." Hallward didn't say a word. "If Dorian wants it, of course you must stay." Lord Henry took up his hat and gloves. "You are very kind, Basil, but I am afraid I must go. Goodbye, Mr. Gray. Come and see me some afternoon in Curzon Street. I am nearly always at home at 5 o'clock. Write to me when you are coming." "Basil," cried Dorian Gray, "if Lord Henry Wotton goes, I shall go too. Ask him to stay." "Stay, Harry," said Hallward, looking at his picture. "And now, Dorian, get up on the platform, and don't move about too much, or listen to what Lord Henry says. He has a very bad influence over all his friends." Dorian Gray was so unlike Basil. What a great contrast they made. And he had such a beautiful voice. After a few moments, Dorian said to Lord Henry, "Have you really a very bad influence? As bad as Basil says?" "There is no such thing as a good influence, Mr. Gray. All influence is immoral." "Why?" "Because to influence a person is to give him one's own soul. He does not think his natural thoughts any more. His sins, if there are such things as sins, are borrowed. He becomes an echo of someone else's music, an actor of a part that has not been written for him. The aim of life is self-development, to realize one's nature perfectly. That is what each of us is here for. People are afraid of themselves nowadays. They have forgotten their duty. Of course they feed the hungry and give clothes to the poor, but their own souls are hungry and poor." "Just turn your head to the right, Dorian, like a good boy," said the painter, deep in his work. "And yet," continued Lord Henry, in his low musical voice, "I believe that if one man lived out his life fully, and gave form to every feeling and reality, to every dream, I believe that the world would get such a fresh impulse of joy. You, Mr. Gray, you yourself, with your rose-red youth and your rose-white boyhood, you have had passions that have made you afraid." "Stop," cried Dorian Gray. "I don't know what to say. There is some answer to you, but I cannot find it. Don't speak. Let me think." For nearly 10 minutes he stood there motionless and silent. His eyes were shining brightly. The few words that Basil's friend had said to him had touched some secret part of him. Words. How terrible they were. How clear and bright and dangerous. One could not escape from them. And yet, what a magic there was in them. Yes, there had been things in his boyhood that he had not understood. He understood them now. Life suddenly became colored to him. It seemed to him that he had been walking in fire. Why had he not known it? Lord Henry watched him, smiling. He knew when to speak and when to keep silence. He felt interested in this young man. Lord Henry remembered a book that he had read when he was 16. That book had revealed to him much that he had not known before. Is Dorian Gray feeling the same? Lord Henry thought. "Basil, I am tired of standing," cried Dorian Gray suddenly. "I must go out and sit in the garden." "My dear fellow, I am so sorry. When I am painting, I can't think of anything else. But you never sat better. You were perfectly still. And I have caught the effect I wanted. The bright look in the eyes. I don't know what Harry has been saying to you, but he has certainly made you have the most wonderful expression. I suppose he has been paying you compliments. You mustn't believe a word that he says." "He has certainly not been paying me compliments. Perhaps that is the reason that I don't believe anything he has told me." "You know you believe it all," said Lord Henry, looking at him with his dreamy eyes. "I will go out to the garden with you. It is very hot in the studio. Basil, let us have something iced to drink, something with strawberries in it." "Certainly, Harry, just touch the bell. But I have to go on working, so I will join you later on. Don't keep Dorian too long. I have never been in better form for painting than I am today. This is going to be my masterpiece." Lord Henry went out to the garden and found Dorian Gray burying his face in the great, cool lilac blossoms. He came close to him and put his hand on his shoulder. "You are quite right to do that," he said quietly. "Nothing can cure the soul but the senses, just as nothing can cure the senses but the soul." The young man looked at him. There was a look of fear in his eyes, such as people have when they are suddenly awakened. "Yes," continued Lord Henry, "that is one of the great secrets of life, to cure the soul by means of the senses, and the senses by means of the soul. You are a wonderful creation. You know more than you think you know, just as you know less than you want to know." Dorian Gray turned his head away. He could not help liking the tall man who was standing by him. His romantic olive-colored face interested him. There was something in his low voice that was absolutely exciting. His cool, white, flower-like hands had a curious charm. But he felt afraid of him, and ashamed of being afraid. How did it happen that a stranger taught him to understand his own soul? He had known Basil Hallward for months, but the friendship between them had never changed him. Suddenly there had come someone across his life who reveals him life's mystery, and yet what was there to be afraid of? He was not a schoolboy or a girl. It was absurd to be frightened. "Let us go and sit in the shade," said Lord Henry. "The servant has brought the drinks, and if you stay any longer in the sun, your face will get brown, and Basil will never paint you again. You really must not allow yourself to become sunburnt. It will spoil your looks." "What can it matter?" cried Dorian Gray, laughing. "It matters much to you, Mr. Gray." "Why?" "Because you have the youth, and youth is the one thing worth having." "I don't feel that, Lord Henry." No, you don't feel it now. Some day, when you are old and wrinkled and ugly, when thought has left lines on your forehead, you will feel it. You will feel it terribly. Now, wherever you go, you charm the world. Will it always be so? You have a wonderfully beautiful face, Mr. Gray. Don't frown. You have. And beauty is a form of genius, is higher indeed than genius, as it needs no explanation. It is of the great facts of the world, like sunlight, or springtime, or the reflection in dark waters of that silver moon. You smile. Ah, when you have lost the beauty, you won't smile. To me, beauty is the wonder of wonders. The true mystery of the world is the visible, not the invisible. Yes, Mr. Gray, the gods have been good to you, but what the gods give, they quickly take away. You have only a few years in which to live really, perfectly, and fully. When your youth goes, your beauty will go with it, and then you will suddenly see that there are no triumphs left for you. Time is jealous of you, and it wars against your lilies and your roses. You will become old and ugly. You will suffer horribly. Ah, realize your youth while you have it. Live. Live the wonderful life that is in you. Let nothing be lost upon you. Be always searching for new sensations. Be afraid of nothing. That is what our century wants. You might be its symbol. With your beauty and personality, there is nothing you could not do. The world belongs to you for a season. The moment I met you, I saw that you didn't realize what you really are, what you really might be. There was so much in you that charmed me that I felt I must tell you something about yourself. I thought how tragic it would be if you were wasted. For there is such a little time that your youth will last. Such a little time. The flowers appear every season, but we never get back our youth. 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 There's absolutely nothing in the world but youth. Dorian Gray listened, open-eyed and wondering. Suddenly the painter appeared at the door of the studio and asked them to come in. They turned to each other and smiled.